Let's talk about the media's treatment of you. So the media's treatment of you for a long time, really since you sort of arose to international prominence, has been this mode of attack, whether it is the BBC suggesting that you're a vicious sexist or the New York Times suggesting that you want to force women into marriage, or whether now it is Ta-Nehisi Coates writing comics that portray you as Red Skull, Captain America's rival, the Nazi. He's a Nazi character. What do you make of these attacks?
Supervillain Nazi, because when Nazi isn't enough, when comparing you to Hitler isn't enough, there's always Red Skull. I think it's kind of hit a limit because the next step is Satan. Right? I mean, that's where you go after Red Skull. And what do I make of it? Thank you for your defense, by the way. Much appreciated.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I should say, look, there have been people in the media who've been supportive of me from the beginning. I would say in Canada, for example, there's 4 or 5 people who I think are among Canada's top journalists who have been firm defenders of me right from the beginning. And so it isn't every single person in the mainstream media, although there's a disproportionate number of people in the mainstream media who go after me compared, I think, to my popularity versus unpopularity in the general public. And I've thought about it a lot. I'm not exactly sure what to make of it. I certainly wasn't sure what to make of the last Red Skull episode. It was absolutely shocking to me. It took me about 12 hours to recover because I couldn't believe it was actually real to begin with. It was so surreal. I found out about it on Twitter. Somebody just sent me the cartoon, and the first thing I thought was that it was a Photoshop mock-up, just another meme. And then I looked into it a bit, and then I was really confused that this had occurred. It just seemed, especially when I found out who the author was, so that was a double shock. And then I decided to, because I'm feeling better and I have my sense of humor back, at least to some degree. And so I decided I'd just play with it instead of any of the other possible options that were open to me. And that's worked out extremely well. We've raised about $150,000 for charity because of it. But it isn't disappearing. It doesn't seem to disappear. And every so often, somebody comes out of the woodwork and takes another swipe at me and hoping that perhaps, hoping that this will be the time that I finally get wiped out. And, that's happened 3 or 4 times in major media outlets this year alone. The woman who interviewed me for GQ, she wrote a couple articles, one in the Atlantic Monthly, Helen Lewis, and she still seems to be quite disappointed in the fact that I exist. And Decca Aitkenhead in the Times in the UK, she was quite the piece of work. And then this last episode with Ta-Nehisi Coates, I thought about it. I'll tell you what I think. You tell me what you think about this. There are people like me, in some ways, like Steven Pinker or Jonathan Haidt, who are public intellectuals who are standing up against critical race theory and the worst of the leftist propaganda. They're rationalists and atheists in the main, scientists, and I have one foot in that camp. But I also have a foot in the mythological, dramatic, religious camp. And, Nellie Bowles, who's one of the journalists who came after me, she's the one who wrote the Mea Culpa 3 or 4 months ago, pointing out that she used her position to destroy people's reputation just so she could attract attention to herself. Surprise, surprise. And, she called me defender of the patriarchy, which was ironic in some sense, her use of that, but also an insult, at least from her perspective. But that's me. Both sides of it, the rationalist side, the Enlightenment side, and the religious side. And so have at her, boys. That's what I think. So I can't think of any other explanation, really.
No, I think that's right. I mean, when I saw what Coates had done in the Captain America comics, and I actually think that it does go to something root about our civilization at this point, because you talk a lot, Jordan, obviously, about mythology and the power of myth. And the most American form of myth at this point in time are the comic books, right? I mean, graphic novels are the form of American myth, particularly the Marvel Universe, which is the single biggest cinematic universe in movie history at this point.
Right.
And to take Captain America, who's the iconic American figure, turn him on his head so that he's opposing some of the stuff that you are saying and what you are saying is reflective of Nazi propaganda. What it really does is it does place you in the position of Satan, except that the same people who very often are celebrating Satan in sort of his juxtaposition to God would never treat Satan that way. I think that you're worse than Satan because Satan is featured in Little Nas X videos as sort of something that ought to be imitated.
Right. There's a celebration of his rebellious spirit.
Yeah, your foot in that religious inspirational worldview does differentiate you from a lot of the other people who the left has somewhat targeted, but has decided is not really worthwhile. That's why I think that the way that you were described in that comic book, for people who missed it, basically the implication was that Red Skull was driving people to join Hydra by issuing his 10 rules for order and talking about the greatness of civilization and how you should make your room. And all of this stuff is driving many on the left up a wall, specifically because it's inspirational. The left knows that when it comes to driving the human heart, it's not enough to be a rationalist. You actually have to offer an inspirational program. And I think this is the great irony, is that folks like Coates, they do offer an inspirational program, but their inspirational program is an inspiration to tear down exactly the institutions of Western civilization you defend, which is why he has created this dichotomy.
Yeah, well,